Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 319 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is Jackson. I'll be joined by Megan in just a few minutes to talk a lot about Florida and Georgia bar exams. Those were the big topics of discussion this week with our students, and we wanted to give you a brief excerpt of what we were saying to the students enrolled in our course. Before we jump into that discussion with Megan, I wanted to just bring you up to date generally on what's going on around the state of the bar exam. It's been a relatively quiet week. There have been very few changes made. We're looking at some important events coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll keep you informed about that as Nevada offers their online test, and then Florida follows up with their online test. And then for most everyone else, we're on to the September exams in person in most jurisdictions, and then the big test date, October 5th and 6th, which will be an online exam covering California, New York, and a lot of other jurisdictions. So there's a lot still to come on the podcast in the weeks ahead. We hope you'll stick around so that you don't miss out on any of that. Our podcasts are produced in both audio and video forms. If you'd like to watch the video of the podcast, you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/319. That's the episode number. And if you prefer to listen to the podcast, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, radio.com, Spotify, and lots of other places where podcasts are syndicated. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the episodes. I also wanted to let you know that our episode today is being sponsored by a couple of really special webinars that we're offering. The first is our ongoing webinar series called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowds and the Fear. We started this podcast back when COVID-19 first arrived. We've updated it continuously since then, and it has proven to be very popular. We do about an hour's worth of training about the strategy that you should employ for the upcoming bar exams in 2021 now, and how to respond to the uncertainty that I think is out there in the bar exam world. And then I save about 15 minutes at the end for a live Q&A. Glad to answer questions that you've got about your jurisdiction or about the plans that are set up or the strategy that we're offering. And we offer some great bonuses as well. So I hope you'll join us for that. We're offering that webinar free of charge a couple of times a week. And to register, all you need to do is to go into the show notes, and you can register from there. Or you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/now, that's NOW, find out all the details and register, and then join us for that special free training. If you've been following the podcast for the past few weeks, I've been talking a lot about a new masterclass that we created. It's titled Abundance for Bar Study. We offered it for the first couple of times in the last 2 weeks, and the response was terrific. It's a 90-minute masterclass that's designed to help you break out of your trance around the bar exam and to break free of the limitations that may have been keeping you from all of the success and potential that you have. We demonstrate 5 very specific techniques to use as you're studying for the bar exam, and it has been really well received. We provide our participants with this training. There's also a free 18-page PDF for participants to use, take notes, and journal in. And there's a private pop-up Facebook group just for people who've been through the masterclass. And we're going to make it available on an on-demand basis. You can watch anytime, whatever's best and most convenient for you. Now, the cost for the Abundance for Bar Study Masterclass is $147. And you can register by going to the link in the show notes, and we hope that you'll join us for that. It has proven to be extraordinarily valuable for the people that have gone through it, and I encourage you to check out all the details and information. We've got a webpage that has got lots more details for you, and then join us for Abundance for Bar Study. All right, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. We've got a really short episode today because we did just primarily focus on Florida and Georgia. And even if you're not a Florida or Georgia bar taker, a lot of what Megan and I discuss is applicable across the country. So I hope you'll stick around, and I think that you'll gain some information not only about those exams, but really about what the bar exam in general is doing and the trends and the way that it's moving. So let's go ahead and jump into that conversation. Hey, everybody, welcome. It is Friday, and we should be done with the bar exam, Megan.
This is so strange that we still have a long way to go. Florida's coming up, and then everybody else has got a long haul till we get to theirs. Very weird bar season here.
Yeah. Welcome. Glad to have you back with us always. Our plan today is to talk through updates and things that have happened in the last week on the bar exam. It's been a quieter week, hasn't it, Megan?
Yes, finally. It feels like we were long overdue for things to settle down a bit. So it seems that they finally have. I'm sure there'll be another wave of changes, perhaps when we get closer to the September bar dates, if those become untenable, the in-person exams. But at least for right now, we have not had any major upheavals in the last week.
And that's probably the first time you and I can say that in months.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Really, since coronavirus hit, it feels like.
That was back in February and March, wasn't it?
Yeah, March when the world
when the world was normal. Yeah. Our plan today is to talk through what's going on. We're going to spend a fair amount of focus today on Florida because that exam is coming up in 12 days. And so we've got a lot of questions about Florida. So we will get to all of those.
So there's no, like we said, there's no state changes, but you and I recorded 2 separate videos for Georgia and for Florida because of some changes with those exams and how they're going to be administered this year. So if you want to talk a little bit about those videos, Jackson, and who should watch them and what the purpose is of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Our goal here is that Megan and I wanted to do these more in-depth videos about the logistics and the procedures of the exam because each state is a little different, or in some cases a lot different. I mean, going to an open book is way different. Florida offering sort of the you can get up anytime you want and leave the room is way different. And so we wanted to talk through those updates as the examiners were releasing them. And that is a separate discussion from the topics that could be tested. So in Florida, I have already recorded a second video called the Florida August 2020 exam preview. That exam preview actually has a review of the February 2020 exam and also what I think is the trend of the exam or what I think we should be looking for in the upcoming August exam. You should watch both videos if you're in Florida for sure. Now in Georgia, we've done the procedures video. We have not done the preview video because we're still too far away, and I want to see where we are with that. But I want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to look at the Georgia procedures for now because there are some big changes, things that I think you should be working on in terms of your study practice. We're going to 30-minute essays, online, open book. There's a lot there. So you and I have talked through all of that.
We have a lot of specific questions coming up now about Florida, and that makes sense. I think this is probably indicative of what's going to happen with this weird bar season, as such as it is right now. It feels weird to even call it a season since it spans from the summer well into the fall. But what we've got is right now, Florida is the big exam that's coming up. So we're going to have a lot of Florida questions that we want to spend the time with to walk through. So if you're not a Florida student, bear with us. Your turn's going to be coming. We're going to be talking through all of these nitty-gritty details for you, maybe in September, end of September, depending on when your exam is. But I think there is a lot of also widely applicable pieces to this too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap here. So don't completely tune us out if you're taking the online exam in October.
Yeah, exactly. So first up is, have you issued your predictions yet? I know you call them preview videos and no one else is jumping on board with that, but have you issued that for the essays for the August Florida exam?
I have. And essentially what we've done is to look at the likelihood of particular subjects based on what they've been tested. But I will say that the nature of the Florida exam in August, as best you and I have been able to discern, is that it will look like day one of the Florida exam. And I think that's the key takeaway. Don't assume that it's the morning of day one in the afternoon or morning of day two. I don't think it's going to be that. I think this is going to look nearly entirely like day one of the Florida exam.
Yes, great. All right, next is I took and successfully passed the UBE in July of 2017. I earned a 149 on the second day multi-state. So my question is twofold. I'll give you the first. Is the second day multiple choice 200 question test for Florida the same exam as the second day UBE?
If you're taking the Florida exam in 2021, the answer right now would be yes, it would be the same exam. The multi-state is uniform across the country, 49 out of 50 states in 2021. However, there's a lot, I think, and you and I have talked about this, there's a lot of reason to believe that we won't see an online multi-state bar exam in 2021. I think that's the first given. The second given is that I think there's going to be a lot of online exams in 2021. So those two problems have to somehow find a solution. The solution in October of 2020 was to go to a 100-question exam that the bar examiners basically said, we're going to give you 100 questions, but we're not going to score them. We're not going to scale them. We're not going to do anything. We're going to do anything with them. We're just going to give them to you and turn around and leave the room. And given that, to my mind, it's very uncertain what we'll see in 2021 around the multi-state exam. I think that the NCBE wants to give that test, certainly. I would think there would be some jurisdictions that want to give it in person, as we had some a couple weeks ago give it in person. So it's still out there, and you should assume for the moment that you're going to take a multi-state exam if you're taking the test in 2021. Now, if you're taking the Florida exam in August of 2020, it is not the multi-state bar exam. And you should not be studying the multi-state MBE for the multiple choice. You should be aware of those subjects for essays, but I don't believe that's what you're going to see in the multiple choice. So I hope that makes it clear. Really two very different scenarios here between August bar takers and 2021 bar takers.
So assuming that this is the 2021 bar taker, since I had success with that previously, the MBE, can I use those materials I've already worked with to prepare for that part of the Florida exam? I would then study your course for the first day and the second day review what previously worked for me.
What I said to the student was that it's ultimately their own journey and they can choose to do what they want. However, I think that when you try to mix and match courses, when you take a part of course one and a part of course two things are likely to happen. One is you're going to get overlap that will lead to overwhelm for a lot of people. It's just too much. And secondly, and I think more dangerous in many respects, is there'll be gaps. There'll just be things that don't get covered in either course because they're in different places. And so you miss out on information. So in my view, the wiser approach to take here is to stay with our course and at least get into one or two of the MBE subjects and see how it feels to you. Our approach to learning the material is so different than a traditional course because we're not asking you to memorize or do mnemonics or make flashcards. In fact, I think this student, I'm not sure it was in the question or not, I think the student said at one point they did 1,000 hours of study. Look, that's an extraordinary amount. Good on you for passing, but 1,000 hours is like a crazy number. Our course gets a passing result at about 250 hours, so a quarter of the time. So in my view, since your time is worth something, regardless of what you're doing, and this person's obviously a licensed attorney now, if I could get you the same result in a quarter of the time, I think that would be an advantage to you. So I would suggest that you stay in our course for everything, try a couple subjects, and if you feel utterly lost and confused, then certainly you could go back to what you did before. But I think that's just being a glutton for punishment, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. 1,000 hours, that is. I think most of us do not have that amount of time available. So
no, not in coronavirus world. No, I don't think we do. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. The next question, I'm going to read the whole thing. It's about, so in Florida, there is a lot of concern, I think, understandably, about the potential for cheating because with the new format, they've opened it up to, they will give you all of the essay questions at the same time, and then you will be able to leave the room for bathroom or comfort breaks, which means that you will not be in view of the webcam the entire time the exam is happening. So this person said, I just watched the Florida procedure video. Very helpful. Thank you. Though I'm a bit unsettled about the inability to monitor cheating on the essay portion. If you're an honest person taking the exam, how is it fair to be scored against people who might be cheating? And I don't think it'll be a select few. I suspect that many decent people who are generally honest will resort to these tactics. Many will view the Board of Bar Examiners' lack of respect for the integrity of the process as justification to cheat, not to mention the inherent pressure to level the playing field to provide for their families. It's like batting against Roger Clemens in 2001. I like that. I agree with Jackson about the importance of good writing and that access to substantive law isn't enough for good essay scores, but the two aren't mutually exclusive. Someone can be a good writer and still reference materials during the exam, further enhancing their score. I will not cheat on this test and believe it would be bad karma to start my Florida legal career in such a tainted manner. And at the end of the day, I think if we're prepared, we will be fine. But this does seem unfair to those who will play by the rules.
Yeah, it's a great, well-written comment. I would echo a lot of it. I think that it has the potential to be unfair. Life is unfair. Coronavirus is unfair. The bar exam in 2020 is generally an unfair setting. It's unfair that people had to go sit in-person exams a couple weeks ago. Still, here we are. So what do you do? One option is to opt out of the exam entirely. You recall, Megan, a year or two ago when California released the exam topics early, quote, by mistake.
Believe it or not, that was just last year. I mean, I know it feels
really?
like
it seems like forever.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There were people who opted out of taking the exam because it just didn't feel fair, and I supported that decision wholeheartedly. I think that the question here is, does the potential unfairness outweigh the potential to pass the exam in this one-day format? To me, that's the equation that you've got to consider. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and Megan, I know you have too, and so I'll get your thoughts on this as well. I think that ultimately the opportunity to pass the Florida exam by doing a one-day test that's essentially built on day one of the Florida exam, that is not the multi-state bar exam itself, if you are following the writing approach that we have directed, if you are taking advantage of the personal writing workshop, and June, if you want to put that link up in the order tab for the writing conferences with Megan. But if you're doing those things, if you are working through our course for the Florida exam, I believe you have a better chance of passing in August than you're going to have at any time we've seen in the last couple of years. I think a lot of people have opted out of the exam for a variety of reasons. Some don't like the format, some don't like online, some don't like whatever it is. But a lot of people opted out. And as a result, I think that I use the analogy of playing musical chairs. There are more chairs right now and fewer people in the experience or in the game. I don't want to minimize it by calling it a game, but there are just fewer people seeking those passing seats. So in my view, the balance tips towards taking the exam. Now, will people cheat? Probably. Will it enhance their writing? I'm not entirely convinced I agree with that. I think that looking up something when you're trying to write under time conditions in this setting really doesn't make much of a difference. We talked about that in Georgia and some other states with open book. I think it's a very minimal advantage, if at all. So I think a good writer is still a good writer, and a good writer who knows the material deeply and intuitively is far better than someone that's just reciting rules and elements, even if they've looked them up. So to me, that's where the balance comes out. What's your take on this? Because it's a really important question, I think.
It is. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that it's wrong. I'm sorry that they're doing this to Florida takers. I wish they weren't. I think it's not okay. I think that it should be an open book test, to be perfectly honest. That's what Georgia's doing, because Georgia's the same thing with, they're going to have, here's all three of your essays at once, and you can't prevent people from going to the bathroom for 90 minutes. So I recognize that, but I think that's how other states have gotten around it, is by just saying, look, we're just going to let you open. You can use anything that's written as your notes or your book. I think it's really unfortunate, but unfortunately it is the card that you've been dealt. So you've got to roll with it or just postpone. But I wouldn't let this be the reason. I wouldn't let this be the only reason why you push back to 2021, especially because, as Jackson said earlier, we just don't have any indication that everything's going to magically go back to normal in February 2021. So there's a real possibility that you're just in the same exact boat, only later. And then now what do you do? Do you go for it that time, or you push back to July and hope it'll be better? And I know most of you really don't want to spend another year. So yeah, I think it's really up to you to figure out what you feel comfortable with, and for you to focus on your own writing, on your own abilities. Don't let it get into your head about what other people may or may not be doing. I know it's hard because it's scaled. I think a nerd just put in the chat box, I don't know how other people cheating can affect your knowledge and your good passing writing. Totally, it can't. What happens though is that the scores generally, they're scaled scores, and so it does, not everyone will pass. And so that's the really the bummer of it, is that if people are cheating, then it pushes everyone else down or puts them at a disadvantage relative. But like you said, Jackson, I totally agree that they are spending time that you are not wasting if you are just writing. There's a bit of a give and take there.
Yeah, I want to just raise one other potential. You talked about an open book exam, and I agree with you. That would be the fairest thing to do. I think the logical question is, would Florida, now 12 days out from the exam, go to an open book exam? Here's the way I would analyze that. Nevada is giving a test online, open book with ILG, the same provider that Florida is using, I believe on August 10th and 11th. I think that's right. If there is a reason following that test, if ILG has trouble or if something goes haywire, it would not completely surprise me that Florida would make a 7-day announcement that they're going to an open book, in part because by not announcing it early, in effect, you level the playing field for people. Now, having said that, if you are using mind maps for your Florida bar study, continue to use your mind maps and make sure that they are rock solid. If you are not using mind maps, you should look at your notes very carefully. It's our contention that open book exams are not very amenable to going through bar review books. They're just not. You're going to want to have some condensed set of notes to look at, the mind map being the best. If for some reason Florida does make a last minute decision to switch, Megan and I will jump right on Facebook Live. We will talk to you. We have a strategy for dealing with it. Not something I'm prepared to discuss in this forum today, but we do have a strategy, and we've explained that to our Georgia students. So I just would say to you all, keep a close eye. August 10th and 11th, watch what happens. That's, I think, the key for what's going to happen in Florida, because they're using the same provider. So that's what we're going to be watching very carefully those couple of days.
Definitely. All right. I thought this was a great question in the chat box about Florida. I'm struggling a bit with the lack of scrap paper. I've been answering multiple choice questions the same way my entire life, marking up the question, eliminating answers, etc. Doing it all visually has been a challenge and more time consuming. Same with working through complex fact patterns on essays. Any suggestions or tips? P.S. It's interesting that the FBBE is more concerned with scrap paper than with people reading their outlines in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let me take multiple choice first. And the answer to this is going to frustrate some of you, because what that question implies, Megan knows what's coming, the wind up, is that you're trying to analyze the question. You're trying to figure out, is answer choice A better than answer choice C? And so you want to cross it out and you want to circle some things. You want to do all that. That is 100% the wrong way to do it. 100%. I put a link in your emails, if you're a Florida student, earlier this week about a 20-minute video that I did called Selective Intuition for the Bar Exam. The approach to answering multiple choice questions has to be intuitive. The goal is to answer a question in 90 seconds. And in Florida, that is absolutely critical, because the longer you spend looking at the question, the more it'll bedevil you. You wrote answers to these Florida questions, and they're just awful. You cannot figure them out. I'm just going to say it. And I know that's heresy, and I know that the big box bar reviews will all guffaw and laugh, because somehow if you've memorized enough stuff and done enough flashcards, somehow you're going to know the answers to these questions. And yet, remarkably enough, the mean is about 14 or 15 questions correct out of 33. Subject by subject, year after year, exam after exam. So nice job, guys. So don't try to do that. And that's a way of saying you don't need scratch paper. Read the problem, preview your answer, and mark it. That's all you need to do. And if you're trying to do more than that, then I think you're missing the whole point, and certainly missing the point of this course. And so I would avoid that entirely. Now, that's the multiple choice. Let me flip it back to you, Megan, to talk a little bit about writing the essay online versus when you have scratch paper.
Yeah, I totally recognize that it's hard and it feels a little bit uncomfortable. But what we're suggesting is that people put their skeleton directly into the response box. So that means that you're going to use the calls of the questions as your, right, those are the conflicts. So you're going to paraphrase them, pick the subject out of it, stick that in the headings with the Roman numerals, break them up if you need to. If there's more than one conflict, break it down into the conflicts that are there. And then you're going to basically do your conflict pairs right directly in sentence form in that skeleton. So it will become your second paragraph. You're going to flesh it out a bit more, but it's going to become that second paragraph. You're going to have party A, testimonies admissible, or sorry, you guys don't do, I always forget, Florida doesn't do evidence essays, and it weirds me out because everyone else does evidence essays. It's such a strange thing. But okay, party A, not a valid contract because mailbox rule, right? Party B, there's a valid contract because here's the term block. And you're just going to have that sort of sketched out for yourself, so that then you go back in when you're ready to write and you're going to fill in the facts. Then you're going to separate those two arguments. You're going to put the law in, that make them in regular sentence form, stick the law in after each one that supports it. And then you're going to put in your application paragraph. So that's the way that we're suggesting you do it when you don't have any scratch paper to do things like write conflict pairs or mark up the parties and the conflicts, is just go ahead and create a skeleton and shuffle things in directly on the page of where they need to go. But it's very doable. I know it's going to feel a little strange at first. That's why we're saying practice it now. Put 2 Word documents up on your screen, with one being the question and one being your response area, and just practice what that feels like to type it directly in.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we first started seeing people type their exams instead of handwriting them, and people would say, oh, I can't possibly do it. Yeah. It's just no way to do it. It's just something you get used to. We obviously have issues around the performance tests. We will start to focus on that once we get past Florida, since they don't have performance tests. Then everybody else that's left on the board will have a performance test, so we'll start talking about some approaches there. But it is doable. I'll echo what Megan says there. And I think you should just simply be practicing, forcing yourself to practice over these next 12 days or so, and it will feel more comfortable the more you do it.
Definitely. All right. If Florida tests crim as an essay, would it be Florida crim or federal crim?
If it were an essay, it would be federal criminal law. And typically it's not, it's crimes. Was there a robbery, or what are the crimes that could be charged with? You'll see some examples of that in your Florida essay book. It's been tested a couple of times in the past few years, and it has been usually with something else as a topic. Again, go back to my Florida Trends preview video. I do talk about that subject in some detail there. Florida criminal law, criminal procedure. If Florida doesn't really trust criminal law, Florida criminal procedure gets tested as a multiple choice topic. It's required, it's mandated by the Florida Supreme Court. So that will be on the exam, along with Florida judicial administration. So those 3 items, judicial administration, Florida crim, and Florida civil procedure, so crim pro, civ pro, judicial administration, all make up one category that's mandated by the state. So for sure, those are going to be on the exam.
All right. And then our last Florida question says, what's the easiest way to condense the outlines, especially if Florida goes to open book?
Mind maps, 100% mind maps. And the mind mapping, if you have no idea, when I say the word mind map, if you have no idea what that means, go to your multi-state module, look under the Files tab, and you will see sample mind maps for every one of the multi-state subjects. These are called shells. And they're very simple. They're generated from the table of contents, and they're literally like a tree trunk with branches. And you're just working around in clockwise fashion. And then you create nested mind maps. Now, the other part of this, I don't know if June can find this really quickly. We have a paid webinar on mind mapping. It says photo reading for mind mapping or mind mapping for photo reading. I don't know, but it works equally well if you're not a photo reader. So it's a really good webinar. It takes about an hour to watch, and it takes you through the whole process of mind mapping. So I think those are all possibilities.
Great. All right. Next, we have a Georgia question. Since the time so I should say before I say this, Georgia went to 30-minute essays down from 45 minutes, and they went to open book, which it has to be physical. So that's really important. It can't be like your books in PDF form on your computer or any form on your computer. It has to be physical books or physical paper, physical notes, things like that. So since the time to write a Georgia essay has changed and it's open book, should I use my notes and time myself for 30 minutes, or should I just continue with the practice of no notes, 45-minute essay?
No, you should be writing now in 30 minutes, and you should be using your mind maps. I think that's the only way to get into practice for this. You have plenty of time. Remember, the Georgia exam now is October 5th and 6th, so you have plenty of time to do this. But absolutely. Now, I think the key, and we talked about this in our Georgia procedures video, I would still do the 45-minute questions. I would just try and write them in 30 minutes. Will it stretch you? Of course it will. But when Georgia went from 60-minute essays to 45-minute essays, they continued to keep the length of the questions about the same, which means that these may be 60-minute questions you're trying to do in 30, which would be really challenging. But Georgia has a history of doing this. So I don't think we can assume that they'll be dramatically shorter questions. But I think the best way to practice is to take the questions that we've got in the course, but write them with mind maps. If you're going to use your books, I think what you're going to discover, and we talked about this again in the video, you won't be able to get very far into the book and still be able to write an answer in 30 minutes. It's just unwieldy, really. And you're much better off working in the mind maps. So that's the area that I would look at.
And then speaking of mind maps, we just had a student comment. So this is one last plug. You should be doing mind maps. Whether or not you have an open book test, you should be doing mind maps. But definitely if you have an open book test, this should be this is your direction to go in. I've been doing traditional outlines from the lectures throughout the course. This week, I started mind mapping the subjects. I've been using MindMeister, which Jackson suggested in his podcast. It's super easy to use. This exercise has given me a better handle on the overall subject and helped compartmentalize big picture themes in my mind. I was getting overwhelmed by the minutia. Now I feel like I have more clarity and can review the subjects in a way that's more manageable. If you don't believe us, listen to your peers.
Listen, mind maps are game changers, and I'm so glad that I shifted us over a few years ago to mind mapping. We started doing it really at the boot camps in large part, and we saw the results. We saw people doing things at boot camp that are like, wow, it makes a big difference. Now, if you're a photo reader, it's super powerful. It's just like a boost. But even if you're not a photo reader, it's an incredible tool.
Yeah, definitely. You should be doing them.
Next week, we will be back. It'll be the 14th. We'll be 5 days before the Florida exam. I agree with you, Megan. We might see some changes next week. I think after Nevada's got their exam, we're going to know a bit more. And then we'll start to focus in on the September and October tests. Still another week ahead for Florida students. I think it's going to be pretty significant.
Happy studying, everyone. Good luck. Florida takers, you are almost there. Everyone else, just keep plugging along. Keep your head down and don't let all the noise out there distract you.
We know everybody's working hard and dealing with so many different things, and so many challenges, whether you're on our side of the call or your side as a student. So I just want to tell all of you what a great job you're doing and how much we appreciate it. Thanks as always to you, Megan, to everybody in the course. Hang in there. We're moving along and it's going to work out. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
That's our episode for this week. Good luck to those of you getting ready for your Florida exams in just a few days. And for those of you around the country coming up in September and October, we've got lots more to say about your exams, obviously, in the near future. Just a quick reminder about our special free training webinar. Now is the best time to take the bar exam. You can check it out at celebrationbarreview.com/now, or just register in the show notes, and we'll see you on that free webinar. Hope everybody has a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you next week along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.